We are back here with Front Office U, here with a special segment, something that I know myself, Ryan, as well as our guests are strongly components of trying to help the next generation, especially in the sports side, but also just in life in general. And we wanted to highlight this with just questions that I've been getting. I'm sure Ryan has been getting as well, and our guest Greg. Before we move into Greg, Ryan, how's everything going today? I know you have a lot kind of on your docket, big travel guy here the last couple months.
Yeah, things are good here, Victor. Appreciate it. Always glad and happy to make time for this podcast, and especially when our guest here today is coming back. We always get tremendous feedback on our episodes with him. So glad to be here, and should be a really fun conversation for us and definitely for the listeners as well.
Yeah, we're excited. We'll get right into it here with Greg Pye, a guy who continues to strive to be great for many reasons, as well as just helping us. And we obviously had him on a year ago, I believe. Maybe not to this date, but it was an idea of your of Red Coat. So curious, Greg, how is everything going with Red Coat? It's kind of crazy to think that we were here about a year ago talking about the idea, the vision, and now the fact that you've been able to do it for now over a year, I believe. Just curious on how that's been going. And obviously, we're big supporters of it as well.
What's going on, boys? Like I said the last time, it's good to be home. Thank you both for having me back on. I can't believe it's been a year already. That's actually really crazy. I was actually thinking about that. It almost is a year to date, off by a couple months. But since then, I know we were talking offline just about how at that point in time I was kind of conceptualizing everything, or we were kind of in that place of getting ready to bring it out to market and whatnot. And when you look at the original podcast from that episode, it's like the sketched version of the logo, not the logo that it eventually evolved into. So that's how far I guess we've come over the past year. But everything's been going well here in Pittsburgh. That's where I still am located. I love it here. My friends are here. I wish my family would move here. But Red Coat has been um, it has made me want to go to sleep crying at night, waking up happy the next day, full of joy later on in the day, and asking myself, why am I doing this in the first place later on after that? So it's been a wild roller coaster. Just like people say, no one gives you a manual on how to be a parent for the first time. This is kind of my baby, and no one gives you a manual on how to start your own agency. So, what a year!
Yeah, it's exciting to hear that. And like, sometimes I think in this, in that industry too, where a lot of people always say, oh, it's, there's tough times and there's good times. The fact that you can kind of elaborate, like, look, dude, not every day is gonna be great. And that's like with a lot of positions, but especially when it comes to, you're finding your vision, figuring it out. And I think also it comes down to the foundation you have around you. Like if you didn't have your family around you or people around you that pump you up, us included, I hope included on that side of being able to push that through. And like you said too, it's really about your vision, figuring that out, but also understanding kind of like who you see yourself as well as like just what you've been able to accomplish in such a short time. Really, when you think about it, right, this is year one. Like we can look down the line in year two, three, and four. Like a lot of these, you know businesses and opportunities, they take time, right? And so I think that's very important. We're excited to follow the journey and see where that leads as well. And if we're ever in if I know Ryan travels more than I, so more realistic, he'll be up in your area. But if he does, I'm sure he'd be happy to hang out and everything. And I know you're a big Boston Red Sox fan, correct? Is that still correct?
You know what? I am. I actually have. I'm looking at them right now. 2 seats from Fenway Park, sitting in my apartment here in Pittsburgh. However, the kicker is that I did work for the New York Yankees, so whenever they play each other, I will not watch that game.
What a team player on and off the field essentially. And I know
Yeah.
they've been they had like the biggest the start off the season wasn't the greatest. And now they're firing at all cylinders. So similar to I feel like for you when you had the starting red coat where it's at first like hey like just gotta figure out what's going on. Now you got a groove. You're able to see a lot of things kind of go through it and like I said, we're excited. If I'm ever in that area, I always will definitely reach out and see if you want to hang out even for
That's what I'm talking about. Yep.
Yeah, maybe
Yep.
a couple of beers or something. We can go
There we
to
go. That's my language.
there we go. We can go watch Boston versus the Yankees, and we both can just be like, hey, we don't care who wins. Just make sure both teams have fun, right? So
That's right. Yeah, yeah. The old, yep, yep.
yeah, the old saying there. But what we wanted to do to bring you on the podcast here, Greg, is talk about just this the sports landscape because as we all know, it's very competitive. You've been through it throughout your career, and you know exactly kind of like what you've learned. And so we wanted to have the best, obviously on this podcast to explain that. So the first question that myself, Ryan, and others I'm sure get is like when it comes to networking, like what do you recommend when reaching out to people who, hey, you've talked to maybe once, maybe twice in the last couple of years? Because I know a lot of people who ask me that. For me, I'm like, you just got to build a really good relationship and understand kind of their, idea of how they like to consume, I guess you could say, information. So just curious on how you were able to build relationships, especially right now, still building those relationships with a lot of different clients you work with. So just curious on, something that students, constantly ask, just curious on what your thoughts are on that.
I mean, a lot of the people listening to this are going to be told by their mentors in some capacity, go to the networking event, go to the Chamber of Commerce event, be seen, like just the old school mentality of all that, which I agree with 100%. I do look at it in a different light though of, uh, so one of my mentors, his name's Brad Lambert. I brought him up on the last show. He is an agent in the entertainment industry and has helped me as I've started my own agency. His biggest piece of advice to me was add value to every room that you walk into, period. What does that mean? That means know a little bit about everything, not a whole lot about something, so that you're able to have a conversation with anybody in the room. You parlay that with having an outgoing personality, which you need to get reps in over time and whatnot, and you become very dangerous in that room because people will eventually trust, oh, why is this person talking to that person? And they'll start to migrate towards you. Oh, now these people are starting to gather together. Maybe I should be part of that conversation. So I do think a piece of it is getting out there and being seen and throwing as many darts at the board as possible. But the other piece of it too is understand that you have a brand in yourself. Your name is your brand. How you go about your day to day is your brand. How are you leveraging that brand in every single room that you walk into? That's the question that you need to be asking yourself.
I love that. I wish I was, said that when I was beginning my career to know, because I think there's a lot of things that, you even said like your mentors taught you that, like, hey, it's a lot of kind of understanding, more than you think, but also, your brand is so important. I think back in the day when I was in college, I was like, I feel like I don't even have a brand. I don't need necessarily worry. But now you look at days of like anyone, like your brand, you got, NIL deals, right? Like it really depends on your brand, how you put yourself out there. And like you said too, getting the reps, I think that's like the hardest thing sometimes where people maybe won't be as outgoing as possible. And especially in sports or entertainment, there's a lot of things that you have to be able to put yourself at. And I know for
Yep.
you, you do a tremendous job of, going out there, meeting people, making sure to build those connections and really investing in it. So I'm just curious on that. Like, what would you recommend, say, someone who's listening to this podcast who's like, man, like I'm very kind of mellow person, don't really like to go out and build those relationships, but obviously want to work in sports or some kind of agency where I essentially have to put myself out there.
Well, the good news is that social media is a thing in 2026. So I tend to try to leverage both in person and over social media. I tend to find, which a lot of people who are mentors in the sales industry, I'm really not afraid to say it, phones don't work anymore. They don't. Sorry, not sorry. I have done deals strictly over email and maybe had one phone call in wrapping up that deal at the end of the email chain. You need to go to people in the way that they need to be gone towards, but you also need to play to your strengths and weaknesses too. I think anyone who's coming out of college, they should try to focus in on what are the things that they struggle with and what are they strong with. And the things that they struggle with, I do think that they should try to make an effort towards improving that area in their life. So, for example, for me, you're talking to someone who had, uh, when I was in college, before I went to WVU, I was at a community college. I did a public speaking event and I was terrified of getting up on stage and speaking in front of people. Now I've had in front of 200 kids at a time at WVU lectures, and I've been on a reality dating show, and I've done many other things outside of that. So I highlighted those things when I was, kind of coming up and learning who I was as a person. It's okay to not know who you are at that point in time. You're not supposed to have it all figured out. With your strengths, though, don't let anyone tell you that you're doing something the wrong way or this and that. Take advice, but in the words of Jay-Z, they could tell you how to do it, they never did it. So be very mindful of what you're taking in and what you're putting out to the world. Be proud of your strengths and improve on your weaknesses.
Couldn't say it better. I think public speaking too is something that like we all have to do, right? Like even if you're on a sales call, like I mean, it's not public speaking because you're talking to one person, but you're still talking to someone you've never talked to in general. And the fact that you were able to put yourself in those spots, like I can tell you that Greg, I don't think I could do that. I always think I'm a good talker, but when I go in front of like a class of like 20, 25, things get a little bit, the lights get a little bit dim and I feel like I'm kind of on the island of myself and not many words come out in general. And so the fact that you're able to do that and see that as like, hey, like this is something I want to improve on. And I'm imagining, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, like the first time was probably like, holy cow, like this was tough. But every other time you did it, you're like, all right, building this, idea of like, hey, I can do this. No one, basically writing your own story essentially.
You have to have enough faith in yourself at the end of the day. And I do think it's not that you can't do it, it's that you don't choose to do it. I think that success is a choice. I do think that putting yourself into uncomfortable situations is a choice. You're just choosing to put your strengths into a different basket than other baskets. That's really all it is. I'm the furthest thing from perfection, but I do have a list of things that I try to improve on every day. When I was on the show a couple of years, the TV show I was on a couple of years ago, I had struggled with my weight. And since then I lost a significant amount of weight because I put myself into the gym. I ate better and I just created better habits outside of going to the same places that I was going to every single day. Familiarity isn't always the best thing. So I do think that everyone has it in them as they grow older with time and see what the world is and all that, to really improve in different areas of their lives. It's just they need to make that choice.
I like how you said that too, like a personal story of like, hey, you were on a TV show where like you wanted to lose some weight and like you were able to really put yourself in the mind to it. I mean, funny enough, that was one thing I'm trying to work on this year after seeing all those videos of you at the gym at 5 a.m. Now, I'm not a 5 a.m. kind of guy, so I'm more of
He
like the 8 or
knows.
9.
He
Yeah,
knows.
exactly. So I got myself
They're real videos, I promise. It's to hold
yeah.
myself accountable, actually. That's what
We'll,
that is.
we'll definitely have
Yeah.
to put it in the video itself just to make sure people know that you were grinding through that time and everything. And no, I think it's important, right, to be able to reflect as well. I think a lot of us are in a stationary spot where we can't do anything wrong, and like this kind of hurts you in the long run. And it's something that kind of leads to our next question here. Like when people are thinking about sports, I have a lot of people who are, I ask them like, what are you interested in? They're like, oh, I just want to work in sports. It's like, all right, well, realistically, everyone wants to work in sports. And a lot of mentors and people I've listened to podcasts always say, like, if you love sports, just be a season ticket holder. Like that's the
Yeah.
easiest way where you can consume the most. So what would you, give advice for someone who's maybe applies for multiple positions for sports, doesn't get any positions, to tell them like, hey, like you should probably broaden and figure out what you want to do, because if you're applying to, say, the Yankees, right? If you're applying for group sales or premium sales, corporate sales, and then you're applying for communications and other ones, like it seems pretty obvious, but you shouldn't be applying for every position in general. But just curious on your thoughts on that, because I know a lot of people do that, and now they're still waiting to get into sports because of that, I guess, move that they've tried.
Yeah, that's a great question, Victor. Now, let's not get it twisted. I will say on one end of the spectrum, say it's okay to not know what you want to do. That's totally normal. You're not crazy. I promise you. I'm still like that to this day. Okay. And I'm 34 in a month. So that's fine. On the other side of it, though, there's someone who's reading your application who's looking for how intentional are you about the role that you're applying for. You don't know. In a minor league organization, for example, in baseball, everyone knows each other. Those applications are filtered through one person, usually, maybe two or three, right? if you're talking about the Yankees, yeah, there are multiple people probably involved, and they're sifting through hundreds of applications and whatnot. Um, I am of the mindset of, especially with someone with a sales background like myself, ticket sales, corporate partnerships, business development. Um, I had to hone my skills in sales in multiple ways to get to where I'm at today. And part of that, maybe the listener doesn't want to necessarily hear this, but let's be real. It's okay to get another job outside of the industry and build those traits up. There's no problems with that. If you're interested in videography and you're still in school, why not do volunteer work with your local your university and build your skills up there, or the local business that's looking to improve their content. I was talking to a gentleman who owns a business in Mount Lebanon, Pennsylvania, a restaurant, and he found out that I had a revenue background and was curious to know if I had a marketing background. I was like, I kind of do, but I didn't go to school for that, and I delved into that over the years. And he was like, well, we're just looking to improve our social media. If you want to do something part-time, just to help us out, we would love for you to do that. There are opportunities everywhere. You just need to throw darts at the board and try to be as intentional as possible about those opportunities. It's kind of like changing your major or whatever. It's okay. It's not game over at that point. I think that we're taught, especially the younger generation is taught that, you have to do things by a certain age or time or this and that. I always say, and I said this on the last podcast, never look to your left, never look to your right, never look back, always look forward. Your friend might be making more money than you. That doesn't mean they're happy doing what they're doing, though. So it might be a slow burn to get to where you need to be. Um, I do think that it's okay to not know what you want to do. Internships are great. I love how someone would come into one of our departments, especially when I was at the Riverhounds, and they would get the corporate partnerships internship piece of it and be like, I really enjoy this, or I don't know if this is for me. I'd rather do things that are more on the creative side, which corporate partnerships does delve into that, but there's an arm that's really handling all of that within an organization. So maybe they're a better fit for that. I think everything is situational, and you can't bog yourself down in what ifs or I need to do this or whatever. You're right where you need to be.
No, I like that you said that too. I feel like we in sports, especially but other departments outside of sports and organizations, we always look to our left and right. And like I said, like the quote that you said, it's like so common. And even look behind you, like someone else who, might have gotten the job that's like basically, right behind you and they're doing really well. Like you always try to, you got to kind of focus on yourself and your development of where you're going to be. And like I said, I mean, I couldn't say any better. The fact that you're able to really, strive and just don't focus on other people. I mean, gosh, I think throughout my career, everyone was making more money than I was next to me. And I was like, if I,
You and me both, dude.
yeah, so look at that. We have that in common. I know Ryan too. It's like, our things, the journey and the process to get there will make the money. Like a lot of our mentors, you've, said it, I'm sure too, of like, hey, like the money will come. You just have to, invest in yourself and trust the process. And at first, like it's tough, and a lot of people outside of sports think you're gonna make 80 100K right away, and that's just realistically nearly impossible. If that was the case, I would definitely be rich and probably be able to spend some money elsewhere versus
I'll be a
all on
millionaire.
that. Exactly. Yeah, and Greg would be even richer because on the partnership side, opportunity for money there.
It's just not real. It's just not realistic. I think there's just so much demand in the sports industry to want to work in it. And like I told you guys, I work a lot now in advising on the music side of things, and that's a whole other world for me. Parallels, but a lot of differences. You got to start somewhere, and you got to learn every little detail, and to the point that you are able to walk into a room and add value to that room. So, yeah, it's a slow burn.
And something that I wanted to bring up too, Greg, having been in the partnership side and something that a lot of, I think, students nowadays look at an opportunity where, hey, that'd be cool to talk to different corporations and partners and so on. And I think a lot of people get the understanding or think the understanding is like, hey, I can go in there right away and to work in the corporate side. And I know there's internships that I always recommend people doing if they want to work in corporate side, because as I know, as you're probably well aware, it's like if you don't have any corporate partnership not necessarily skills, but any experience, it's really hard for you to be able to beat other candidates who have, years of experience. So like, what's something that you'd recommend for people who want to work in corporate partnerships? Like maybe any strategies, because obviously you got to that level. So I'm just curious on, your inputs and what are some advice you give to people who've been trying for quite some time now?
Let me put it to you like this: fast money isn't always good money. So I'm not saying that in a sense of you start your career, you make nothing, or you can make more in another department, or the commission's higher, or whatever. I'm saying one of the best people I know who owns a business, his name is Mike. First sponsorship deal that I ever did in Pittsburgh with the Riverhounds. Mike's Beer Bar on the North Shore, right next to PNC Park where the Pirates play. Strategically, we wanted that building to be not just a destination for our fans at the time to go watch the Riverhounds on the road, but we wanted to partner with somewhere that like was a great business model. Like this is someone who was a Procter and Gamble executive overseas for years and was from Pittsburgh and moved back after all that time, and this was his retirement plan. What I did not realize, we're getting back to something here. What I did not realize was he grew up in the restaurant business. And the reason why I'm bringing that up is because he learned every piece of the business before starting his own business. He did all the dirty work. He did all the front of house, back of house, and he knew how to vet people out because he knew what worked for his restaurant that he grew up in and what would work for him in 2026 starting his own business. It's not a bad thing to start in another place. Like I know we talked about earlier how it's you should be intentional, but not all those who wander are lost. And I do think that it's okay to especially when you're in your 20s, figure out, like I said last time on the podcast, what makes the most sense for you. Um, Took me a while to get into corporate partnerships. I actually shadowed someone at my first gig with the now New York Boulders of the what is it now? The Frontier League. Wow, they were the Can-Am League at the time when I was there. And I was an account executive selling tickets and doing whatever they needed me to do. And I would go to recap meetings with the broadcaster, who also, you'll notice in minor league baseball, a lot of people in broadcast also handle partnerships. Seth Cantor, who I believe is still there. And I fell in love with that piece of it, but I knew it wasn't my time yet to get into it. As time evolved, I worked for some really great people, people like Angelo Shalfa, Garrett Shea, Dan Gant. A lot of people will probably be listening to this episode, and they were like, he has something in him. And it took time for me to build that up, though. Would you rather someone give you an opportunity when you're a little bit further down the line and you've kind of built up your interests and whatnot, or would you rather just be potentially flustered and not really know what else is out there? Um, I started in ticket sales. I worked in minor league baseball for multiple teams, and then I worked for the Yankees on the ticket sales side for granted, it was not a long period of time, but enough time. Then I eventually moved into partnerships because I didn't see things, of course, going that way within such a large organization with so much demand. And I was managing sponsorships for Fairleigh Dickinson University in New Jersey between two campuses. And it wasn't just athletics, it was also the Alumni Association and student orgs and all that. So, and then it got to the point where I started working on the youth agency side for who I mentioned, Garrett Shea and Dan Gant, some of the best people I've ever worked for in my life, who really taught me the landscape of the partnership side of the business. And they have a very extensive background as well, working both together and separately. But I look at my life and I bring up all those opportunities, and some kids are going to go into an interview and they're going to be asked like, "Why'd you bounce around from place to place?" And my response was always, I'm glad that I bounced around, because you're not supposed to know it all when you're in your 20s, and especially. And I learned about myself in the process. I learned what I like, what I don't like, what I'm good at, what I'm not good at, and that's ultimately a better fit for your business long term. Looking back on the things that I was able to evaluate.
Man, that's incredible. I when you asked that question, or when you said that, hey, like someone was asking that question, like you bounced around a couple times, I was like, I don't know what the answer is going to be, and the response you had was like spot on. I'd be like, dang, I think Greg should be in my position versus versus elsewhere. But I think also like the fact that you brought up all your mentors and the people that were around you again, like that's how important it is in this industry, but also for your development too, because you knew that hey, they had your back and they understood the process where you were looking at, and I think that's where myself included. A couple of years back, I was always like, oh, I should get here. I should be there already versus understanding like, hey, I still need to learn some stuff. I need to work on some stuff as well before I can get to that level. And I think that's something that, people listening to podcasts have to understand where it's like, it's not a sprint. It's really a kind of marathon trying to figure out exactly where you belong, right? That's life in general, like trying to figure out where we belong, where we feel the best, where we we can be essentially the best. So I'll pass it here to Ryan, kind of ask his questions and everything. But so far so good, pretty incredible to hear.
Yeah, absolutely. And I kind of want to tie in some of our discussion from earlier on in the podcast when we talked about, getting out to some of those networking events and opportunities and finding a way to keep in touch. Because I know for both Victor and I, we've been in situations where we've gone on to move from organization to organization, as you have as well, Greg. And, a lot of times we ended up knowing someone within that organization or someone who previously worked there that gave us a little bit of an inside information into what it's really like in a day in and day out type basis. So, like, what would be some advice you would give for other people that are, in the application process, looking to get their role in sports for just kind of the value you have when, you have a pre-existing relationship with someone within a team or an organization?
Yeah, well, let me put it to you like this. You guys had a guest on here several years ago. I was actually really surprised to see this name. His name's Ashwin.
Yep.
He was a manager with the Houston Texans. He's also a former intern of mine. And we didn't know. Well, I guess, heard the first episode that I did with you guys when I was at the Riverhounds. And and then I heard him because I was listening to you guys on a weekly. I am listening to you guys on a weekly basis. I'm like, did I just hear my name? And lo and behold, he did give me a nice little shout out. My point being, I'm not saying that I necessarily got him any of those opportunities, but I have a lot of kids that I have helped bring up, especially between like 2019 through the pandemic into 23, 24. Um, and I see the value from that end of it. Whether it's me helping this individual craft a resume, um, helping them connect with another individual that might be a better fit for them to network with. Um, there's absolutely value in that. On the flip side, someone like I'll say Lil Greg, Lil Greg, would I'd look back at him, and I would say, like, you need to get to as many things as you can. Now I find myself, especially when I moved to Pittsburgh, I really didn't know too many people, but I knew I was going to meet people. And I knew that my job entailed that too. So I was out, like out. I was out at networking events. I was out at the bars. I was out at whatever was going on that had nothing to do with the bar. I was trying to diversify the places I was meeting people to the point that it got me into different areas of the city. And now I'm in this place where, yeah, red coat isn't necessarily a Pittsburgh thing, but I know someone in every single part of the city. And that's a product of me putting myself either into comfortable or uncomfortable situations. So I do see the value in having, like, knowing someone. You can do that easily, potentially through LinkedIn. Um, Being connected through family members, friends. Asking questions is a big thing, whether you're on the sales side of things or you're on the videography side of things or on the promotion side of things, because everything that you do in life is sales. So you need to convince another person or another group that you are a viable candidate for whatever it is that you're looking to get into. So I do think that it's always a plus to know someone, but it's not the end all be all if you don't. You just got to gain some more confidence in yourself and get out there. Like, don't be sitting on your couch all the time. You can sign some solid emails and whatnot, um, from your phone while sitting on your couch. But I find value in face to face and meeting people that way. And why not be the coolest person in the room talking about sports? Like that was kind of the upper edge that we had going to networking events, especially on the minor league front, was because you're dealing with these local chambers of commerce most of the time, and you have all these businesses, and they all are the same in some capacity. But then you're the baseball team or the basketball team or the hockey team that walks in, and people immediately want to talk to you about the score last night. So, and even if you don't have that logo next to your name, like talk about the things that you are passionate about and get to know the logos that might be in the room and whatnot. Know the business better than the business knows itself, because you never know, even if someone is not in the sports industry and you're networking with them, if they already have a connection or not with someone who can give you a nice little layup.
No doubt. And you mentioned that earlier on today as well, Greg, on the episode when you mentioned that like it's okay to not always know who you are and have that period of self-discovery where
Yeah.
you're kind of in the process of, trying to identify, what is your brand or what is your competitive advantage that you would have over other people. But your ability to connect with others, oftentimes can help do that. And like you said, too, being willing to ask a lot of questions and realizing that, there's more out there that you don't know than that you do know. And I think that can be something that can be, very impactful for people to remember upon some of those experiences as well.
I do want to say, adding to that, Ryan, I saw something the other day, and it might sound generic, but it stuck with me, and it's really true. Um, and I mean this from a throwing darts at the dartboard, don't let it get you down perspective. Winners are losers who've lost more times than you can possibly count. I've lost so many times in my count. I've faced rejection so many times than I can count. Just because someone turns you away from a conversation, just because it's not the right fit, it doesn't mean that doesn't mean that you're not meant for more or to connected with the right person or group or whatever. It's just not your time, and that's okay.
Totally. That's so well said. And yeah, I think it can be easier said than done from a big perspective. Obviously, we all have those day-to-day struggles, but I think that it can be something that can push you forward when you have that perspective of knowing how to overcome those adversity moments. And obviously, there's plenty of people that are there to support you, as I'm sure most people feel that they're there to support their friends and their family along the way as well. So I think that's really impactful. And kind of on a similar note, Greg, I want to kind of shift gears into times of adversity for those that are trying to kind of break into sports. I think that's something that Victor and I have experienced a lot with a lot of people that listen to this podcast or reach out to us or have questions on how to find a way to navigate in their career. Like, what are some recommendations that you would have, Greg, for those people that want to work in sports but are having a tough time kind of breaking in and maybe even have some moments of self-doubt where they're unsure if it'll ever happen for them?
Let the setback be the comeback. Simple as that. I mean, how many times have you watched a show like American Idol and you see someone there, the judges are like, "Oh, you're not old enough. You need to develop your voice more. You need to get better with your, upper register or something like that." And then they come back 2 years later. And they're like, "Yeah, we remember you." And it's kind of the same mentality. It's just something that's not meant for you. It won't be in your circle, your vicinity, and that's okay. I think we live in a time of like instant gratification and wanting everything up front. And especially on the sales side, you know how it is. Like you get questioned by your managers, the GM, the president, the owner. Where are we at with this deal? And you get grilled on it. And it kind of trips you up when in reality, some of the best deals that I've ever done in my life took 6, 12, 18 months, and that's just the reality of it. And any good manager would know that too. So, and I say that because, and this is a big piece of advice for your listeners, just because there's a logo associated with the sports industry and you want to break in and you're going to apply to all these jobs, that doesn't mean it's the right place for you. It doesn't mean that you're going to value your batting stance, if you will, the way that someone else might. And it's okay to face that rejection and whatnot. So anytime that I face rejection, I used to take it as like, I'm not good enough. Now I take it as, okay, I'll see you later. Thank you for the time. And I wish you the absolute best on your search. And I go and I find something else that means something to me. And it might be, I always said the best things that have happened to me in my life are the things that I never expected or wanted. They were always the things that I needed.
Totally. Yeah, that's so well said. And I think timing plays a big, key part of that, whole, journey that everybody has as well. That, everything kind of happens for a reason. And, I think it obviously has played out like that, in your career as well, Greg. So very well said. Appreciate that. And with that being said, I'll pass it back off to Victor here next.
Yeah, I obviously great insights in general. I think a lot of people have to hear that too, where it's like, hey, you just have to realize that if you really want to be in sports or any career path, really you got to keep pushing yourself and you can't give up when it's tough. Because I think a lot of us, you know, Greg, you talking about Redcoat, right? Like it was tough to begin with, right? There's a lot of things
Absolutely.
that you want to do, and imagine if you quit, like you would never be as successful as you are right now, and you look in the future too, and so. I mean, I huge component, a huge shout out, obviously, to you to be able to pursue your goals and your dreams. And I think that's the same way, kind of what you're explaining of how like don't give up just because it's tough. I mean, I think nowadays, like you say, with gratification stuff, me included, like I thought I was the best soccer player ever. I did a tryout for a community college soccer, got cut, was the first one cut out of, and there was only like three cuts, so like pretty bad. And that was like the biggest thing where I understood that, hey, like I think I need to understand that, hey, there's some things I'm just not good at. And obviously being an athlete was definitely not one of those. And so I think in your case too, like I'd like to kind of hear even more on the side of like, when people do reach out and get frustrated, because I'm sure you have people in your network who are like, hey, Greg, I need advice. Like I'm tough right now. And maybe even in life in general, like what are some things that you would recommend for them to either you have them reach out to other people who've been in that position, just because like I know for a couple of my friends now, like they try to get into corporate partnerships and it took them over like 7 to 8 months. It was the hardest, they said, the hardest journey ever, but they are obviously much happier now that they stuck with it. And I think they also shouted out you as well for helping them as well.
Cool. I like the sound of that. Don't gas me up, dude. um, I think that just I don't know. Like I'm in my head as you're asking me that question. I'm thinking about my buddy David, who I help represent. He's a pretty major recording artist. He actually just texted me, and he's kind of like he is my best friend. I've seen him at his lowest points. I've seen him at his highest points, and I realized that whether it's him, his wife, his children, his network, his circle, the people that he introduces me on the day to day, like I'm always getting a good word from him, and I realized that if I was working with someone else, like I wouldn't have the foundation there as much as I have with him. So you have to be open minded to that. Like let's say, like I said earlier in the podcast, you know. With Red Coat, when I first started, I thought it was going to be a balance of music and sports, and it is designed to be that way in terms of artist and athlete representation on the sponsorship front and whatnot. That became someone like David allowing me to influence, like, when are we putting this song out? What are the graphics of this look like? Which events should we go to? What partnerships should we try to pursue? And I found myself doing a lot of the A&R, the artist and repertoire side of things, along with his wife and his friends as a part of Urban Rock Records. I'm saying this because, like, I built up the relationship with an individual over time, and not because, oh, this is a musician and I'm looking to start an agency. It happened to be someone that I built the trust up with, and that led to better and bigger opportunities as a result of that. Whereas if I went to someone, let's say a DJ in the UK, off the bat, someone, myself, originally from New York City, New Jersey, Bergen County, New Jersey. Um, we listen to a lot of house music, so I could speak the lingo. Um, but they already have a manager. They already have someone who handles this. They already have someone who handles that. So, it's a little bit tougher. I'm not saying that everyone knows a David, but I will say is look within your network or try to build your relationships up, and that'll lead to more and more opportunities to grow.
Incredible. I love I think the stories are the most important part too, like sharing that, hey, like, you have someone in your corner like that and you guys both, pump each other up, right? Like you could have a bad day, obviously, David's there to help you, and then you're the same way where it's like, everyone's gonna have a tough day. You just have to have friends like Ryan and I, we've known each other for a while. I give Ryan a ton of credit because he'd always call me in Iowa and that was like the hardest time of my life. And so now like I'm still obviously here and everything, and so it's nice to know that you have people like that, like how important it is. And the last question I kind of want to ask here before we wrap up is like what's your legacy, Greg? Like if someone once you move on, better things, right? Or in the future, whatever the case is, like what do you want your legacy to be when people think of Greg Pye, Redcoat?
I love that question, and this means a lot to me. For the listener who doesn't know what red coat is, my grandfather was my best friend. He passed away in 2018. He and I grew up going to Fenway Park up in Boston every summer, and we built such a love for each other over time through the game of baseball. And I always said that I wanted to work in it, and I did have the opportunity to work in it. And and years went by, and he started to get older and whatnot. I moved to Nashville, and I noticed when I was living in Nashville, I used to work for the Nashville Sounds as a premium sales account executive on the ticketing side. I lived in a really nice apartment complex in Midtown. I'm sure a lot of your listeners would like to hear that because it is a good time there. But I noticed how bad the homeless community was in that area. And as a 20 something year old, I didn't know how to help those people, but I always wanted to. Um, and as time went by, I worked for a number of teams, and then I got to the point where I worked for the Riverhounds. And this is really, I mean, people know about it, but it's really the first time I'm talking about this candidly on a platform like this. There was one day in May of 24 where I got let go of and broken up with my girlfriend on the same day. And I was in a very rough spot at that time. I wasn't expecting it. And I was very tough on myself. But my buddy Brad, who I alluded to earlier in the podcast, would call me from Los Angeles every day, wake up, apply to jobs, wake up, apply to jobs. And then one day he snapped and said, "You should start your own agency." So I thought about all these things that happened in my life and my experience with sponsorship and this and that, and the people I've been able to meet and how much I love relationship building. And I thought about the homeless community, and my grandfather, tying this back into him, used to wear a red jacket, a red coat in the springtime. And I never understood why. And it wasn't until he passed away that I started thinking about that red coat. And I was thinking one day, I was like, why don't I parlay? Um, and this is going back to the legacy piece of it. I associate my grandfather with two words: kindness and integrity. And I think about how could I help these people in 2020 at the time five, while also doing what I love to do at the same time. So my lucky number is five. My grandfather's lucky number was five. So on May 5th, 5/5/25, I launched Red Coat in honor of him, where it is a boutique sponsorship agency, management agency at this point, because we're doing all kinds of other stuff. Where the thought process is on the revenue side to sponsorship and other things. If my grandfather could have access to a red coat in the springtime, then others should have access to one in the wintertime. So a portion, at least the goal is, of everything that we do revenue wise will go back to the homeless community through that kindness and integrity that my grandfather and his red coat once wore.
Wow, what a great story to end on too. Like the fact that you look back to. I think a lot of us always we look forward, right? Which you said look forward, which is great. But sometimes it's good to look back to see kind of where you've been able to come from, and like kindness and integrity. Those are two things that I would say a lot of people say, but how many people actually show the action? So the fact that you've been able to show the action, really the development of what we've seen in a year, and we're huge, obviously, components here at Front Office, you and helping you getting your story out there, but also letting people know who you are and why you're a great human being at the end of the day. So with that being said, I want to thank my co-host Ryan as well as Greg on being on the podcast here. This is something that we wanted to be doing for a while now, and we're excited to be able to get this out here, hopefully next month or so. So then all of our listeners can kind of hear more about what it is to get into sports and what you have to do to really find success.